Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this webinar. This is the second one that we're hosting for the Accelerator Alumni Network. My name is Lindokuhle Nzuza, and I head up Jamlab project here at the Wits Center for Journalism. Before we start with the program, I would like to give a brief overview of what we do and how we do it. So the main goal at Jamlab is to strengthen innovation in African independent journalism and media, as well as grow the diversity of the continent's voices in the public space. So this is how we do this. We run 3 programs under Jamlab that mutually support each other, namely the Accelerator Program, the Knowledge Program, and the Community of Practice. So the Accelerator, under the Accelerator Program, this is where we mentor early stage media startups through a 6-month program. The Accelerator Program also includes the aftercare, which is one of the reasons why we're here today. Under the Knowledge Program, we document innovations which are taking place across the continent through the magazine and the newsletter. We also award grants to journalists across the continent to help us in documenting innovations which are taking place in their respective countries. These grants help us to reach audiences which we would not normally have access to. Under the Community of Practice, this is where we engage with journalists and media stakeholders to get a sense of what is happening in their newsrooms. We do this through monthly webinars, meetups, and also collaborate with other organizations in the similar sector who are doing work which is similar to us. So this webinar is part of a series of activities we have been working on for the Alumni Aftercare Program. This is an extension of the work that we've already done on the Accelerator Program. So we're hoping to create a network of entrepreneurs across the continent who support, share contacts, and help each other through the entrepreneurial journey through various platforms. Throughout this webinar, please feel free to ask questions. I'll just enable the microphone. One of the biggest challenges, the reason why we're having this webinar is one of the biggest challenges that we face globally is the COVID-19 pandemic. Companies have closed, people lost their livelihoods as we were trying to survive this airborne disease no one fully understood. So the pandemic forced us to slow down and reevaluate how we wanted to do things going forward. While this was happening, companies were also born from the ground up. So today we're looking at how companies have been operating post the pandemic. Before we start with the webinar, I'd like to introduce Jamlab Accelerator Manager, Philip Mohodu, to say a few words.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Philip. As Lindokuhle did mention, I've been Accelerator Manager since its inception of the program in 2017. Jamlab, as she did state, it shortly stands for Journalism and Media Lab, and it aims to promote innovation and journalism within the media sector. So this is the second alumni event that we are actually hosting that brings together not only our alumni, but also various stakeholders within the digital media space. And what we are aiming to actually do with such events is, as part of the aftercare program, something that we didn't really have before. So what we realized was our cohorts will come into the program and then they would leave, but they wouldn't really get the necessary help because we were under-resourced. And that makes it very, very difficult. And that's why even some of you previously have sort of work with you or coordinate anything with you, because I have my responsibility at Jamlab, and then some of the requests you find that they're very, very demanding. And hence we launched the aftercare program. So we are hoping that through events like this, we can actually promote cross-pollination of ideas within Jamlab, but also other stakeholders within the digital ecosystem, whether it's opportunities, whether it's challenges. And based on my experience over the years, we worked with various alumni across the continent, working on different media challenges in their respective countries. And what we are seeing is, as the media landscape changes, not only in Africa, but globally, we are privileged that we've been part of this program. Brand companies are coming up with innovative ideas and solutions to contribute to society and also the discourse in the digital media space. Again, what we are also seeing is within the journalism and digital media industry, over the past few years, we faced a number of challenges, and it's encouraging to see entrepreneurs leading innovative ideas to bring change to the society we live in. And for example, today we have Adenike and Bongani, who will be taking us through their journey and sort of just giving us more of a, not only what they do, but more of a reflective exercise in terms of how they work, what are some of their aspirations, their visions, if they've had any pivots or pivotal moments. We'll touch on that later. And running in parallel with that, just an overarching theme is what we are seeing within the media landscape is digital communication is expanding opportunities to create new kinds and forms of media. And in terms of how to engage different audiences, what we're also seeing is journalists and media makers are also increasingly having to operate independently rather than depending on long-term employment in large media institutions. And this evolution is disrupting the labor markets and presenting new opportunities in a way that one could have never envisioned 20 or 30 years ago. Furthermore, globalization intertwined with technological advancements and the shift in geopolitics and changes in regulatory structures, they are also shifting not only the consumption and the production of digital media products and services, they are also shaping the commodification, the distribution, valuation, and the marketization of media. And all of this requires new creativity and entrepreneurship in setting up and finding one's outlet to create a marketplace for their products and services. So we are proud to be part of those changes, disruptions, and evolutions. And all of this wouldn't have been possible without the tenacity of the entrepreneurs or the alumni that we work with. And we would like to welcome you all and thank you very much for being part of this journey. We are still figuring out how we are going to do this as we move along. And we are really grateful that you are part of it. So yeah, and also looking forward to the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Philip. So I'll introduce our speakers today. Today we're joined by Adenike Aloba from Dataphyte in Nigeria. Adenike was part of our 6th cohort that concluded last December 2022. So Dataphyte is a technology-enabled, citizen-powered data gathering and analytics platform that provides highly localized real-time data for journalists, researchers, government and international non-governmental organizations within Nigeria and globally. Welcome to our virtual stage, Adenike.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We are also joined by Bongani Shongwe from Cardinal Magazine in eSwatini. Bongani was part of our 4th cohort from 2020. Cardinal Magazine is a digital travel, lifestyle, and leisure publication that aims to educate on racism, xenophobia, and promote inclusivity and diversity through tourism. Welcome to our virtual stage, Bongani.
Thank you for having me, Linda.
I'll start with you, Adenike. Please, can you take us through the idea behind Dataphyte?
Okay. Products and services. We give expression to this in platform, which is the frontal one, the one everybody knows. But we also do research and data collection, and we have several products that target whether it's research, whether it's data access, or training on data journalism, data science as a whole. So that's what Dataphyte does. Just it quickly, sharp, yeah.
Was your company founded during the pandemic?
Okay, so it's interesting because Dataphyte actually launched out during the pandemic. So it was it was a bit of a rough adjustment in terms of figuring out first how do you do the work, given that everybody's at home and locked up. That drove Dataphyte's output and sort of established its footing even when it was launching out during the pandemic, was the fact that even the need for information was higher and people did not want any kind of information. People were struggling, trying to figure out what this whole pandemic was about and why they're being locked away, even though there was a lot of information out there, but contextual information that helped people understand why it affected them or why they should pay attention was scarce. And so Dataphyte came and launched its journalism part of the work at this time, providing valuable information. In fact, Dataphyte launched a COVID-19 dashboard that predicted to about 95% accuracy, the spread or the scale, the rate of spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria. And that was really valuable. And so it gave us kind of like sort of a boost, a good welcome, even though the circumstances were challenging at the time. But yes, in terms of coping with human resources, of course, folks were working from home. Collaboration had to be where collaboration could happen physically, and we will walk through and talk through our certain work. Collaboration was happening virtually, and a lot of work kind of had to be dependent on people having, and see, we live in a developing country where light is not guaranteed and internet connectivity is a challenge. And so people had to work within those constraints, not knowing for a fact whether there was going to be electricity supply, not knowing for a fact whether your internet was going to work when you needed it to work. And those kind of difficult, unusual circumstances that Dataphyte itself was birthed. So you could say that we're kind of born into the struggle and kind of living through the struggle. Yeah.
Okay, please can you take us, please can you outline how you develop your business model?
Okay, so I mean, again, working through the fact that you were launching out during a pandemic, it helped that there were development partners who wanted to support that work, who wanted to support the kind of work that Dataphyte was doing, especially because it was so needed at that time. But of course, that was not long-term. And even though we still benefit from development funding, our focus had never been just to be dependent on development funding. But one of the things that has driven Dataphyte is product thinking and thinking, how can we design products that can help us to be sustainable? One of the very first product launches, to describe it that way, was research. And so even outside of development partners, we had, even early on, especially because of the COVID-19 work that we had done, people who had research needs, either it was data collection or analysis, who had research needs, out and engage with us. So that was the very kind of first product. But our thinking, the solutions we're providing and how we're going about this has evolved even as the work has evolved. And now we have several platforms for data access. We have Anfani, we have Nubia, we have Dataplex, where we are curating open fiscal transparency and accountability documents like your budget documents, and driving just the open government, open accountability and governance conversations. But Dataplex also provides bespoke data services where you need a particular set of data thinking and innovation around technology, digital technology, and that linkage with media and media outputs is how we had originally thought about Dataphyte and Dataphyte sustainability. And so we have given attention to that even as the company has grown. And that is how, we landed on GoLookR, because it was a clear need. People needed to collect the kind of data that wasn't easy to collect. Collect the kind of data that, for instance, if there was an organization in South Africa doing something around health, or maybe finding out some of the post-COVID health challenges that people are facing and want a rich research across Africa, it is challenging for you to be in Nigeria to collect that data. And so if you think about it, that's the simple solution we're bringing with GoLookR. It's data collection, had to reach places, curated and collected by citizens, which allows citizens to be engaged, part of their own data, because in reality, this is their data. Data about them, about their environment, or about something that concerns them. And GoLookR provides kind of a linkage for citizens themselves to benefit from the data collection process. And on the demand side, which is whether that's an organization, whether that's a development institution, they are, the demand side, and allows them to get what they need while still powering development. The good thing about this is these kinds of data are critical for engaging development conversations, whether that's in what kind of products are needed in a certain area, or what kind of interventions will work in that area. And so GoLookR provides that linkage. Again, this is an offshoot of how we have been thinking about how product thinking can help the media, kind of face the sustainability challenges that have remained even before the pandemic. The conversation had started before the pandemic, but the pandemic, and that's a conversation that doesn't sort of get a lot of air. The pandemic kind of disrupted, almost hastened the challenge we are seeing with media sustainability. A lot of journalists lost their jobs, and where there's data in developed countries about just how many job losses happen. In developing countries, for instance, like Nigeria, there's not a lot of data, but we do know that the impact was significant. Media organizations were cutting down on staff at a time when people critically needed information. And so the whole media sustainability conversation was accelerated by COVID-19. And the hope is that there's a lot more conversation helping media innovators to rethink how they're engaging with media sustainability. One of the things that I recall just thinking about is in this conversation around sustainability, a lot of media organizations are thinking about sustainability from the outcome, from I want more profit. But media sustainability is not a conversation that simply starts with your output. If you're thinking media sustainability, you have to think about the product, yes, but also the process and the people. And the innovation that is going to change your output has to be a through and through innovation that innovates across the value chain, which means you're not only innovating your output, and you're not only innovating, because what we then saw was media businesses were engaging with business development and going everywhere and talking about business sustainability and how we can get this done without serious consideration for the process that produces the product they're supposed to be selling. In fact, in some media rooms, to talk about journalism as a product is problematic, and you still have some resistance of some of the veterans that we have in thinking about journalism as a product. But in reality, that is what it is. And thinking about it as a product forces you to think about the process of the production of the process, but it also forces you to think about the people that are working that process. And if there's any conversation that I think we need to have even more critically, is how do we innovate the entire value chain? Business media sustainability is an end goal, but an end goal indicates that it starts off from somewhere and there's a middle point before that end. And I think that it has become critical for us to begin to have the conversation about media sustainability, the end-to-end holistic sense in which we should be thinking about it, which is thinking about the people producing, thinking about the process of production, and thinking about the people consuming our products. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Adenike. Bongani is having network issues, so I'll just bring him to the conversation as soon as that is sorted. You touched briefly on collaborations and partnerships. Please, can you take us through how you actually identify them strategically? And also, is there a methodology which you use? And if there are key takeaways for some entrepreneurs that they can take from your experience, please, can you take us through that?
Yeah. Okay, I think I want to start from, it's to say that there is no, it feels as if when you think about collaboration, it's self-explanatory. We all know the meaning, but the reality is the road to achieving partnerships that work and collaborations that amplify your output or amplify the work that you're doing and amplify that of your partners is not quite as straightforward. So if we are all struggling a little bit trying to find the right kind of partners and the right kind of people to collaborate with, you're in good company, because even the biggest organizations constantly have to wrestle with the idea of collaborations and partnerships. What partnerships am I going to, because sometimes our need drives us to seek partnership when it should be our purpose driving us to seek partnership.
Yes.
I'll say that again. Sometimes it's need, that drives us to seek out partnerships and collaborations, when in reality, it should be our purpose driving us to seek collaborations and partnerships. And it can be challenging when you're operating in a difficult business environment where your resources are not guaranteed. So it feels like, look, the next person that comes, whoever comes and asks me to do this, or whoever wants to do this, but is that what you want to do? Does it fit into your purpose? Because motion, there can be motion without movement. And sometimes we do this where, let me use the example of a media organization, applying for every grant opportunity possible, applying for every consultancy opportunity possible, simply because you're just trying to you'll be expending all of your resources, both your monetary resource, financial resources, and your human resources, pursuing something that doesn't really matter for the future that you're hoping to build.
Yes.
And so that can be challenging. But the one thing that we try to do in Dataphyte, and Dataphyte is a young organization, it also means the team is small, but there's value to that. Because the value is we can sit down and say, why do we want to pursue this partnership? For instance, Nigeria's 2023 elections ended. Dataphyte has one of the most not to sound like I'm tooting our own on, but our elections platform was one of the most used during the elections. And one of the questions we had to answer was, look, we're a small organization. How are we going to access data in 774 local governments of Nigeria? We do not have the resources to place people in all of those places. So what do we do? Who is doing this work that does not have the platform that we have, that would not mind collaborating? And I'm telling you, and again, this is alumni conversation, so we can be open and free. We had about 5 to 6 people who wanted to partner. The truth is, the least known partner was the one who turned out to be the most useful. So if we had set out to do this partnership with, let's look for the guys who have the name, who have the presence, because obviously one great need for us was to boost that platform, to be able to say, hey, I'm collaborating with this big name person, that big name person to do this. It would have been kind of good, but would we have been able to actually do the work? For us, it was that people, again, remember, if you paid attention to Nigerian elections at all, it was quite heavy. There was a lot of eyeballs on what is happening, what is going on. A lot of people were paying attention, and people needed a source for information that they could trust, and a source for information that they could easily process without having to wait through too many things. And that's what the Dataphyte election platform did. So it would have been helpful to go for the big names who would have automatically given us exposure. But And now that we can pull back and review the nature of our partnership and how we went about it, we can say for a fact that partnering with the organization that we partnered with, the primary organization that we partnered with, especially with data collection, because here's the thing. Yes, we had a need for exposure, but our greater purpose for that platform was to be able to curate data that was important for people to make decisions, to understand what was happening about elections in locations where they couldn't possibly be in. So yes, there was a need for exposure, but the greater purpose was data and the need to collect data. And this is elections. This is very volatile. You didn't want to collect any data. We saw a lot of reactions to data, to all kinds of data that were being pushed on elections day. So it was volatile. So yes, we did have a need for exposure, but our greater purpose was to serve people with data that was verified, that they could they get updates about the election on. And so choosing to partner with that primary partner turned out to be very effective, turned out to be very useful. And I think that there's no straight line to partnership and collaborations. There's no, oh, these are the organizations. It's going to happen in season. It's going to happen depending on what you're working on at the moment. For instance, for us in building Go Local, choosing to find a partner in Jamlab was a strategic opportunity at the time for us. It was critical for us because we needed to be able to build something that didn't just make sense in our own heads, because sometimes you're designing something and it kind of just makes sense in your own head. And so it was critical for us to seek out that partnership, to do the work that was needed, to be a part of that and to work through that. So it's going to change based on what you're working on at the moment, but the ultimate goal, the ultimate purpose of what you're building and the futuristic positioning of your organization or of your business is critical to seeking out partnerships and collaborations. Remember, need shouldn't drive partnerships, purpose should.
Yes, I really like what you said, Adenike, about not just forming partnerships and collaborations for the sake of it. I really like that. Bongani is ready and his network is fine now. Bongani, welcome to our virtual stage. Hi, Bongani.
Hi, Linda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Bongani? Welcome. I'm glad it's sorted.
Thank you.
Please can you take us through the idea behind Cardinal Magazine?
So essentially, well, firstly, thank you for the invitation. Firstly, a Cardinal Magazine was birthed in 2015 when I just got to varsity at UKZN. And at the time, there was a xenophobic incident. And because eSwatini and Zulu are similar, I didn't really experience problems, but I had other international friends from Zimbabwe and Botswana and Malawi. So what happened at the time, during the xenophobic attacks, they would ask you what is an elbow in Zulu and what's an ankle. And that's how they would tell if you are a foreigner or you are local. And like I said, since Siswati is similar to Zulu, even if I said it in Siswati, they would think I'm one of them, so to say. And then it got me thinking that, hey, it isn't fair that the fact that my friend is coming from Zimbabwe and might not be familiar with Zulu, that he now must be a target, you know. So then I started formulating this idea, how best can we educate each other on our different cultures to show that although we are different, we hold certain similarities, you know. And hence, Cardinal Magazine was born. Started off as a digital publication, but now I would say it's sort of bordering along the lines of being a civil society organization in a way, since we advocate for human rights, not just for xenophobic and racist incidents, but across the board, because diversity and inclusivity is very vast.
Thank you for that, Bongani. You were part of our cohorts from the 2020 Accelerator Program. Was your company started during the pandemic? And please, can you tell us about your experience starting a company during lockdown?
So oddly enough, we released in July 2020, and a month later, we were, what can I call it? Recruited into Jamlab, so to say. So initially we started having shoots in 2018 because idea came in a dream, like literally, and I would say it was like a prophecy of sorts. And ever since then, I've just been working on this idea, you know, making sure it's perfect. And this thing of trying to be a perfectionist, you end up procrastinating and holding on to stuff. And then for some reason in July 2020, I figured, hey, everyone's home. Let's take advantage of that, because I always wanted the magazine to be digital so it can be international. So then we released in July 2020. A month later, got into an interview with Tsepo at the time and Phil, presented the magazine. Guessing they saw the vision I was going for. Then I was part of the first cohort. And it's been quite tricky because we started off by trying to include everything in the first publication, but we're able to scale and see what to focus on. And then in the last issue, which was supposed to come out December 2020, unfortunately, my dad caught COVID, and then later in January, he passed. So I had to postpone the publishing of the magazine. And in as much as you can plan and prepare for certain scenarios in life, death is always unexpected. So then we were forced to find out how can we actually be sustainable, because I wasn't familiar with dealing with Master of the High Court, for example. And I had to now figure out, hey, I have a team I look out for. There's this vision we are trying to achieve. So how do we keep the brand going? So then that's when we started diversifying the portfolio. Because I have a background in tourism, we then started offering tour guide services and tour operating services to people. And that also actually got our brand moving, because we were now referred to diplomats, senior government officials, and who later became our strategic partners, and who we are now using till today to push what we are trying to achieve as well.
That's really impressive, Bongani, and my sincere condolences on your father. I just wanted to find out what are the key drivers to change your business model from what it was to civil society, and also how did you hone out the value proposition?
I would say that in the beginning, because we live in an ever-evolving world, in the beginning we thought, no, we're doing this one way, you know. But as we learned whilst being in the Jamlab cohorts, that hey, life is unpredictable. You have to be ready for anything. Like, what happens if racism was to end tomorrow, for example? Does that mean our work now stops? So we then set up a research consortium that is always looking at what is happening in the world, what are new trends and things like that. So we always stay on top of the ball. So through that, we're then able to see that, hey, what we are doing is actually beyond just racism and xenophobia. There's an element of being Pan-Africanist in there, you know. And then I was like, no, it's not just Africa, you know, we can't only be advocating for African rights. What if I am an African that is in Europe, in North America, in Australia, for example? Does that mean I don't have rights when I'm there, or my rights shouldn't be regarded there? That's when we're like, oh, okay, let's look at human rights as a whole. And that's how we then shifted from just xenophobia and racism, but to focusing on ethnicity instead, because ethnicity deals with people belonging to a certain group. So that's why we're like, oh, okay, since we might not be able to change society in the beginning, we might as well allow people to come into this group of ours. Because what we learned with brands like Nike, for example, some people buy Nike because they want to feel a sense of belonging to a certain community or whatever brand. So we want to do the same thing. We are not selling tourism, but rather we are selling this group that you can be a part of and that you can experience. That's why we usually say we use tourism as a tool for shared experiences. And yeah, I hope I've answered you fully.
Yes, you have. Thank you, Bongani. I'm going to bring back Adenike. Also, for a note for our attendees, please feel free to ask questions. Adenike, we have a question here from Richard Matthew Gawazi. And he's asking, in what ways have emerging technologies such as AI and GTP tech and bot affected your relevance? Is it good or bad? And please, can you kindly expand?
Thank you very much for that question. I would have been surprised if it didn't come up because it's obviously the conversation of the day. But let me dial it back a little bit and say that my position with media and digital technologies and what it has done to the media landscape had always been that we could not afford to take an adversarial position against emerging technologies because we can't stop it. And we can't limit its capability. What is useful, a useful positioning for media organizations is how can we leverage digital technologies first, but also how can we begin to build digital technologies? And let me just throw this out. What does an AI that helps journalists tell better stories look like? We don't have to wait for the Googles and the Microsoft to come up with this. Maybe we can't finance it ourselves, but how about we collaborate with these organizations to finance it? So to now directly answer your question, there is an impact. There is a significant, in Africa, especially in emerging economies and developing countries like Nigeria, the impact is not quite as significant yet. It's like a cloud looming, and what we're in a position now to properly prepare. The impact, we've not seen people losing jobs, for instance, because of AI technologies and what they can do. That hasn't happened. But what is beginning to happen is that, we're beginning to see a lot more people use some of these technologies to produce better work, to speed up their outputs, and to do it better. But there is a significant challenge ahead, which is what you're asking, is this bad or good? It's not bad or good to the extent that we can pause and ask ourselves, how can we leverage this? And how can we repurpose it for our own use, for optimization, for our own output? For instance, AI technologies are going to allow our Go Local tool, for instance, AI technologies is going to allow our Go Local tool to be able to do better geolocation, better mapping of data location. So for instance, if I'm collecting data in a certain area, AI is going to enable us to do that better. And so we are in a position to begin to look at, okay, how do we leverage this? If we can't afford, how do we begin to build partnerships in these spaces that can allow us get ahead, of the curve? So again, to try to respond broadly, it's not good or bad. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things, even before we got to AI that can write an entire article without verification and got to AI that can do all kinds of things, I had been advocating that media, and by media, I mean the entire value chain, both those of us that are doing journalistic outputs and those of us that are producing all different kinds of media. My position had been, we cannot be spectators to the development of digital technologies.
Yes.
From a sustainability positioning stance, it doesn't do us much good to wait until it happens to us. But also from a development lens, we need to engage with the production or the shaping of future technologies. Because for me, the biggest problem in my head for AI is how it will likely deepen inequalities in a society. So that's a gap. A gap or a problem also presents an opportunity. So how can I solve that problem with the product that I have, for instance? How can I solve that problem of inequality? Because internet penetration we're not even close to 50% in Nigeria, and that's Africa's biggest population. So which means that AI technologies are still a conversation of the elite, which means the more these technologies grow without, pausing to make sure that everybody catches up, the deeper, the wider the inequality gap is going to get. That's a problem that needs a solution. So how can I jump on this? How can we leverage this to solve? So AI technologies is not good or bad. It hasn't yet put us or anyone out of business. And I think even in the developed countries, the conversation is still ongoing. It hasn't so radically changed the business environment that we now have to say, but we do have an opportunity now to begin to think, how do we leverage? How do we fill in the gap that AI leaves behind? So I hope I answered your question somewhat.
I think you did, and it's related to the next question that we have from the floor. Lwazi is asking, how do you envision tech innovation in Africa, and how do you see your organization playing a role in that climate?
So tech innovation in Africa is, I mean, we're already beginning to see the impact of technological innovations on how we do businesses. Everybody had to become a digital whiz somewhat, whether that's learning how to use Zoom or learning how to quickly do your own designs on Canva, to, you know, all the many things that technology now enables us to do. And I think that the biggest question Africa will have to answer is much less how these technologies will impact, but how do we not deepen existing inequalities in African societies? I think, and I understand the need ahead and getting in the front. I think even the opportunity that exists for the African markets is in answering the question, not deepen inequalities in our societies. For instance, Nigeria's yet our financial inclusion index is not great. Our inclusion index is not great. And when you disaggregate for gender, it's even worse. All right,
Yes.
okay. And so I was saying that when you disaggregate across gender, it is even worse, which means even though technology is transforming the fintech environment, the sort of like the result we're seeing is deepening inequality. And so I think the opportunity for Africa and the Africa digital environment will be, how do we respond to the question of inequality in our environment?
Mm-hmm.
Because we will always be able, for organizations and businesses that can get ahead and that have some level of access, we will be in rooms like this and having these conversations and thinking, oh yeah, so how can we leverage AI technologies? How can we leverage ChatGPT, for instance? Maybe some of us who have businesses where you need to respond to maybe customers, how can we teach, you know, an AI bot to be a human being, which fastens the customer response process and all of that. But I think that the biggest opportunity for Africa lies in answering the question of how can we make sure that the advancement in digital technologies does not deepen or widen the inequality gap in our markets.
Okay, thank you for that, Adenike. Let me bring back Bongani. Bongani, how do you envision the growth trajectory for your startups in terms of getting more customers and actually expanding to new geographies? Bongani? I think we lost Bongani.
Sorry,
Bongani,
am I
can you hear
audible?
me? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Did you hear my question?
Yes. Sorry, please could you repeat the question?
Okay, so I was asking, how do you envision the growth trajectory of Cardinal Magazine, and also in terms of getting more, in terms of getting more customers, and also how will you be expanding to new geographies?
Well, firstly, I would say it's through our partnerships. One of the first people we partnered with when we finished the accelerator program was one of the fellow cohorts. I'm forgetting his name now, but he's from Angola, and he started a news fact checker called Nuxo, NUXO. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. But yes, for example, since misinformation is big online, people don't care about context. They just, if they see someone being necklaced online, they'll be like, hey, South Africans are xenophobic towards the rest of other Africans. And they won't actually find out if this article is from 2018 or is it something from 2023. So hence we partnered with Nuxo for that. So people can actually take articles they come across online, plug into there, and then actually see that, no, this is recycled news, because people are quick to get angry or react instead of actually doing research. So by partnering with him, we are now tapping into the Angolan market. because he has his own audience, we have our own. It's an exchange of audiences. So the same thing with all our other partners, because we also partnered with an organization called CSE in India, which is an abbreviation for Center for Science and Environmental Issues. And they are meant to focus on the kids magazine, because we created 4 characters for the kids magazine: a Black female, a Muslim female, white male, and an Asian male. So the reason for those 4 characters is to educate kids from a young age, because kids pick up on what we do and the ways we act. So now we're also tapping into a new market by having the kids magazine, because instead of just appealing to the adults and travelers, so to say, we are covering vast amounts of topics that allows us to tap into a new network, so to say. And also by partnering with, sorry?
No, sorry to cut you. Continue.
Because I was saying that also by partnering with this organization in India, we're also tapping into their audience. And we can also now liaise with the Indian embassy in our country, which will also assist us in expanding our reach locally as well, since they have the financial backing to do so.
What kind of content does the kids magazine have? And do you create your own content when it comes to the magazine, or is it done through the collaboration with the organization in India?
So for the kids magazine, there are 2. There's one which strictly focuses on tourism and travel related things, like the National Geographic type of magazines. And the other one, which is called Cardinal Social Responsibilities, which is we try to play around with the abbreviation CSR, because not just a company that's out here to make profits, but rather to show that we have a heart, you know. So hence we played around with the CSR abbreviation. So with the content, we curate the content. We tell our partners that, hey, we're looking for something like this. We find out if they have any existing articles that are aligned with that. And if not, we guide them on the type of content we're looking for. And then they also offer suggestions, and then it's a back and forth, as it's all about conversation.
Okay, thank you for that. And well done on expanding the view and your reach of Cardinal Magazine. It's really impressive. I just want to find out, what are some of the key things or ideas about business that you learned during the pandemic that you're applying now post the pandemic?
I would say be open to change. Anything can happen at any moment. Don't think just because you've been doing this for over 25 years, it's one way to do it. There's so many companies that closed down during the pandemic. And just yesterday, I found out about a restaurant I used to go to in Durban that is closing down now because of load shedding. There's always certain hindrances that are unexpected that keep popping up, because load shedding wasn't a big deal back in 2016, 2017 in South Africa, but now it's come back and it's really affecting companies in a huge way. Same thing with preps for today's presentation. I didn't anticipate having network problems, but I had to quickly make a plan, think on my toes, you know. So you constantly have to be in the moment, in as much as you can plan for the future, have projections, but remember to be in the moment. Certain responses need you to respond now, in as much as you might have a 5-year plan, but certain things force you to respond now, within 5 minutes, within 5 days, for example. So always be open to change, always be willing to adapt to any new environment or situation that arises.
I like that. Thank you, Bongani. Adenike, what are some of the key ideas or things that you have learned during the pandemic and that you're applying now?
Thank you for the question. I was hoping you would ask me as well. I think that the one thing that has stayed through personally for me, but also in my research, is it's people first. Whether those are the people that are working for you, working with you to do what you do, or the people you serve, it's always going to be people first. Even in a society where AI technologies appear to be moving so fast, our heads are spinning, it's still always people first. Most of the research around the impact of COVID-19 on businesses centered around its effect on people and how that cascaded to affecting their work and their output. So if there's one thing that I'm learning and trying to constantly adjust, and people first is going to mean different things. It's going to mean sitting with your people and getting honest, especially if optimizing your output or your product is what you're looking at, sustainability, how do we make this money, and all of those questions. It still starts with people. And it's easier when you're a smaller organization, because I also feel that sometimes young organizations like ours, young organizations under 10 years are there's a subliminal messaging of focus, you have to make the profit, and so we don't get a lot of the conversation around building your people and building your structures and making sure that you're not building a process or a product that is not central, that people are not central to, and we don't get a lot of that messaging. Subliminally is almost like you're too young to focus on that, just focus on making money. But in reality, people make the work. I have energy, I have strength, but I cannot do what everybody on my team is doing. I can't. Yes. I can't, for instance, because I'm not the founder of the boss. I can't replace my boss. I can't replace everybody else that we're working with. And if they don't do their work well, then our output is going to be poor, and we're not going to be serving the people we want to serve. And so I would say building and focusing and thinking around your people will force you to rethink your process. Yes. For instance, a lot of companies wanted to introduce come back to the office. And we realized that our need for being in the office is less about being able to be more productive and more about actually socializing with co-workers. Yes. So if you want to reintroduce coming back to the office, rather than, you'll be more productive at work, maybe the unique selling point should be, we want to know you. I don't just want to see your face behind the camera, to emphasize that socializing bit of the work community. So again, rethinking how we engage with our people will help us to rethink how we engage with our process, will ultimately help us improve our output and our products. Yes,
it's so inspiring to actually be on such a platform with you, Adenike. Not a lot of entrepreneurs can actually explain or expand on their work as clearly and as inspiring as you have. I really like the point that you mentioned, that you can't do other people's jobs, and it made me think about entrepreneurship and mental health. How do you ensure that you stay ahead, your mental health is stable and healthy, and that you also perform optimally in Dataphyte?
Yeah. So I think an awareness of self helps, because again, we can make policies around mental health, but it really comes down to the one individual person. And I think self-awareness helps, and self-awareness is a journey. Again, just being vulnerable, because, hey, this is kind of like a family meeting, if I can say that. Being vulnerable is, I do have a lot of energy and I could do a lot of things. But last week or 2 weeks ago, I realized that I no longer had the capacity to walk a whole day on an empty stomach. Mm. And I used to be able to do that before. Mm. And so by the end of the workday, I thought I was sick. I thought I needed to get to the hospital, but all I needed to do eat. And I just use that as an example to say self-awareness is critical to mental health. Nigeria is a complex society, and we have a lot of challenges where you're faced with news that can affect you severely. For instance, because of the core of our work, which is data journalism, we're a little more aware of the core of the challenges that are happening in our society.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the debt situation is not quite as easy and will not be dealt with by simply changing government. And that can, I mean, the simple truth is kind of depressed. It can make you feel, what's the point of all this work? And being able to pull back, being able to just pause and design or manage your workload in such a way as to be able to shut down if you need to take a few moments. And that's for me on an individual level. At an organizational level, we try to kind of infuse, I mean, for me, the driving thinking around it is cognitive dissonance. If you've been looking at something over and over and over again, it could be helpful to you to look at something else. And so sometimes, whether that's interrupting somebody's workday by, hey, this your new haircut is really nice. And I know those things are simple and small. Whether it's traveling miles to attend a colleague's wedding and updating everybody else in the organization and saying, hey, this is how the wedding is going, this how it kind of helps to, again, it puts humanity in front of it. It helps to see that, oh, we don't just care about your work outputs, we care about your whole life. And again, it's individual basis, it's day on day, it's sometimes hour and hour. Someone whose output is really high, the output suddenly drops. You want to pause and ask, is this I'm disconnected, I don't want to do this anymore? Or are there externalities that are affecting that person's output or that, and you want to interrogate that and know the kind of solution or intervention that you want. It's day by day, it's person by person, but for the is important. I think that having a community that you can be vulnerable with, the entrepreneurship journey is lonely.
Yes.
For as many entrepreneurs as we have in Africa, you will think it will be far easier to journey with you and who you can share with and relax with. And but in that, and sometimes we kind of think, oh, there's no community, and we forget to ask ourselves, how am I fostering a community? If there's no community existing, what can I do to facilitate, the existence of this community? For instance, do I want to invite people for a hangout where we just talk about the challenges? Do we want to do a Jamlab Accelerator alumni hangout where we're drinking juice or champagne, depending on whether you take alcohol or not, and just talking through maybe not the serious esoteric things, but more of the simpler, hey, how you doing? How's your family coping in this entrepreneurship journey? Those kind of things help, yeah.
Thank you for that, Adenike. Bongani, I'd like to pose the same question to you, and also, how do you keep your mental health in check? Bongani?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit.
Yes, I was saying I'm posing the same question with regards to mental health and entrepreneurship to you. How are you finding it, and how are you ensuring that you keep your mental health healthy at all times?
Well, firstly, I would say recognizing the fact that I have a team, because before, believe in this thing, you see the vision of this idea, this baby of yours, but sometimes you need to be comfortable with trusting your team that you work with that vision, that they have the same interests as you, because if not, you find yourself overworking, doing everything, and you have to finish anything because you're trying to do multiple things at once. But instead, if you delegate, you're able to maybe, like, for example, let's say I'm dealing with partnerships. I'm able to sit with the people that I feel align with the brand, as opposed to now going out to search for guest writers, going out to search for selling ad space to people. Well, in fact, I just focus on this one thing and let everyone else do the other things. And we come back and just report back, because one thing I noted is that rest is very vital. I remember during the time of Jamlab, can I call it courses? But the submissions, the submissions were quite intense. Missed everything you have going on, because you have to dedicate time to the program. So I was able to learn about time management, because when you overwork yourself, you're not able to output anything at that point, and you want to deliver quality work, but at the same time, you have to be gentle with yourself,
Yes.
because we are so focused on the returns, the profits, hitting the profit margins,
Yes.
We forget that if you don't look after your health, you'll not be spending the money you're making on hospital visits and other medication,
Yes.
So I would say, yeah, delegating, resting, and just being patient. Because one thing I also did with the kids magazine in particular, we created the characters to be 2D characters. They were actually created by a second-year Wits art student. And the reason for that was so we could measure our growth as well as we went on, because the main goal is to have these characters be 3D-like characters, not really to go against Disney and all the other animated characters that exist, but just for us to look back and be like, hey, we started by having these 2D looking characters that might look bad now in the beginning, but once they're actually done, we'll be like, oh, okay, that's where they started, this is where they are now.
Yeah.
And you actually research more on our journey and our story as well.
Okay. Bongani, looking back at your journey, is there anything you would have done differently? Also, what has been your biggest influences in addition to dream of starting and running a business?
To answer the first part,
yes.
I don't think I would have done anything differently. I'm a firm believer of divine timing. So I think everything happened the way it was supposed to. I wouldn't change anything, because it formed me to who I am today. Certain experiences, certain lessons assisted in shaping the type of team member that I am today, and learning how to deal with people, because we all have different backgrounds, different traumas, different experiences. So by me allowing myself to feel everything and to learn everything as I go through, because we're all doing this life thing for the first time. So by allowing myself to be human, I'm able to relate to the next person as well. Because if I'm trying to do things in this perfect way, I might not relate to another person who's also trying to start something. I might feel like, hey, it's so easy for me, whilst they are lamenting about, I'm having issues with access to entry, There's so many barriers, and I wouldn't be able to relate. But by being human throughout the process, I'm able to actually relate with them, and they're able to relate back to me, and we're able to build each other and exchange knowledge, networks, and things like that.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, what was the second part of the question again?
So the second part, I asked, what has been some of your biggest influences that you had that pushed you to start and run your business?
Oh, so many different things. I come from a family of educators. My father was a principal. My mother is a teacher. My older sister is a lecturer. So I think subconsciously, I also had this dream of contributing something education related to my peers and to strangers, because the reason we actually are trying to reduce the access to information, because that's a huge issue here in Swaziland and in other African countries. People don't have basic access to information. Like, some people know how to Google certain things. You have to guide them that, hey, if you're looking for this, Google in such a way, it'll give you certain results. And I feel they shouldn't be, what can I call it? We shouldn't be judged based on our backgrounds, on how much money our parents had, about what schools we went to, but rather, even if I put myself through school, I should be put on the same footing as someone who is the son of a billionaire, for example.
Okay.
So that's why we're trying to share education and information as much as possible. So it's all about your work ethic, the merits of your work, that should open doors for you, not because of who you know, because here in Africa, it's about the brown envelope, you know.
Yeah, corruption kills a lot of industries. We have a question from Richard Matthew Kawazi, and the question is for both Adenike and you, Bongani. And he's asking to what extent has the accelerator program helped you with securing collaborations in the continent? And also, what are your experiences with these collaborations in terms of culture and ethics?
I'd like to go first. For me, the accelerator, it opened me to a new network. I was introduced to people doing amazing work across Southern Africa that I wouldn't have had access to prior before joining the program. So for that, I'm thankful to Jamlab for actually creating this network, this alumni network of ours, because like I said, with the partner from Angola, I was able to work with him, and it was an exchange of cultures, an exchange of ideas. Hence, we are now building each other in as much as he's assisting me with what I'm doing. I'm also able to offer suggestions that, hey, in Swaziland, this is how we approach the media. This is how we read online articles, because we don't really have a paywall here in Swaziland with articles, unlike with South Africa, how there's News 24, Times Live, and all these people. So certain things like that, you're also able to take into consideration when you form your idea in your own country, that although this works in one country, it might not work elsewhere. Because for us, network is a huge issue. Hence, I was having troubles even connecting today. And now I want to shift from being strictly digital to also going back to physical copies, so we can also cater for our local people, because it doesn't help catering for the American, European, or North African markets, but yet we don't have a foundation here at home. So by engaging my fellow cohorts, we're able to collaborate, to build networks, they're able to refer me to people, I refer them to my people as well. And we just have this whole ecosystem that's advancing media in Africa beyond just the region.
Thank you very much, Bongani. Adenike?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think that the program facilitated even just better understanding the peculiar context of the different countries that were part of the program and the different businesses that were part of the program. And Dataphyte is still kind of building out, the kind of partnerships and the nature of the partnerships that we want to, and how we want to engage with our members of the court. But we are kind of like the latest babies, so and we're still working that out, figuring how to engage. My particular cohort was so inspiring, so many great ideas, and so we're still working out how to engage, especially given the tool that we actually just launched, which is Go Looker, and how it can either enhance the work that other partners are doing, or other partners can leverage that to add to their own work. So yeah, but it is promising. It is a promising outlook. And again, just facilitating an environment where we can be real, we can be vulnerable, we can share real truths about the job, helps individual members to kind of learn. So those to learn to kind of understand the space, the culture, the ethics, and how to navigate those markets. It also helps that we can always go back and say, hey, sorry, Catherine, sorry, Philip, I'm trying to do this and I need to understand what I need to do. And that's available to us. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Adenike. And this brings us to the end of our informative webinar. Thank you, Adenike and Bongani, for joining us. And thank you for everyone who attended the webinar. I hope you got some useful insights, and we look forward to having you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Bongani.